have your ears blocked up? Yeah?
I remember having
That's how I am now. So, and I haven't been on a plane, that's only the ride here, but I have the same results. So you have to bear with me, I can't really hardly hear anything. You don't have a stand?
He's bringing one.
Hmm?
They're bringing a
They're
stand.
bringing it? Okay, well, until they bring it, I have a few questions before I begin. First of all, my name is Miriam Litke. My maiden name is Fachler. So you see that we're related. And are you all local? Are you all born here in, if not in Modi'in, in the country?
Yes.
Yeah? No? No? Where are you born?
Canada.
Canada? Oh, that's close enough. Okay. Have you any family that were survivors in the Shoah? No?
Raise your hand if yes.
Just raise your hand. So you have heard stories about the Shoah, or they don't talk about it? Have you heard stories?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Have you heard talks and seen films?
Yeah, we've seen it.
Yeah? Just raise your hands, because I can't. Okay, good. Have you been to Yad Vashem?
Yes.
Oh, good.
We all been there last
Okay,
year.
very good. Okay. And you're going to Poland?
Yes.
Okay. So, but you're all Israeli, you're all, everybody's, in other words, what we call native, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. When I look at this, wow. I want you to know, on a personal note, that this afternoon, there's a tekes at the Kotel where two of my great-grandsons will be inducted. They started right after Tisha B'Av. And when I look at you, at your age, are you 17, 18?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, we know what's next. It just amazes me. It just really does. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
I
can hear you
hardly
great.
hear you. Okay. Okay. So, the big question I have is, where were you? What were you doing when you were around, let's say you started school at 6, like I did, and then when you were 10, 11, 12 years old? Where were you? Just give me some individual answers so I can. Who wants to give me an answer?
Primary school.
School.
So you tell.
School, primary school.
Public school?
Primary. Kilo,
Okay.
yes, I
No,
do.
but what about outside of school? Outside of school, were you had friends?
Soccer field.
Football team.
A lot of soccer, kadoregel, football.
Football. Good. Good. Very good. Any of you did something more unusual during those years growing up? No?
We had COVID a bit later on.
COVID also they had. COVID.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Well, it happened right.
We were all in the building
COVID
together.
happened right when we were.
No matter what age,
leaving
right?
primary and
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was born in Berlin, and my first school year at age 6 is the same year that Hitler came to power. I don't know if I can do this, but it's terrible, terrible, terrible. Which meant that that was 1933, the year that Hitler was democratically elected. And I went to school. Things were pretty normal for me. I was a little girl. I was well protected from our family. I had an older brother, about 3.5 years older than me. You know, I'm having a really hard time with my ears. I mean, for myself. Is there any way you can organize something hot to drink?
Yeah, for sure. I'll get like a tea.
Yeah, tea.
Sure.
You're gonna get.
It hasn't been this bad. In any case, when I started school,
מה זה?
uh,
כן, אני לא יודע אם זה...
I was doing okay. Okay, let me get this on. That's good. Behind me, huh? Oh, yeah, that's better. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Let's see, as long as they can hear me. Okay? That should be easier. That's my eyes.
Maybe lower.
What?
Okay, you can hear me? Yeah? Yeah, that was good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's easier. All right, so I'm at school, and my father takes me to school to start with. You know, takes me there, brings me home. And as the years go on, by the time I was 7, 8 years old, the Hitler youth, the Nazi youth, were getting very busy marching on the streets, and they knew that the children who were going. I went to a day school, Jewish day school, a girls' school in my neighborhood, but I had to watch out because they would sometimes throw stones, and obviously you didn't want to be hit. By that time, by the time I was 8 or 9 years old, it was getting very difficult. But this is the life we had, and we carried on. So. By the time Hitler was busy with his program, and in October 1938, there was a big what do you call it in English? Action, a big action to get rid of all Polish citizens and ship them out of Germany. Now, my father was originally from Poland, from Lodz, and so was my mother. But they met and married. They didn't meet. They married in Berlin, and they considered themselves what is called Volkdeutsche. That means folk Germans. They didn't get citizenship. They didn't probably even try, but they considered themselves German. And we spoke German at home. My parents spoke Yiddish and Polish, but we were told you have to speak proper German, Hochdeutsch. which was important in order to have a good education. And on October 1938, we're just around this, we're in that month now, of course, the October 27th, which happened to be my brother's birthday, and my father was traveling for business with his knit goods and other things like that. That's what we did, because originally we had a shop and we had to close it. At that point, when Hitler started with his programs, you couldn't have a store anymore, so he was like a traveling salesman with the same merchandise that he would have in the store originally. And I heard a big bang on the door, and I thought, oh, probably my mother forgot to leave the latch open, and my father was coming home from one of his travels, and he can't get in. So I jumped out of bed, and I went and I opened the door, and I'm faced with 3 black shirts, SS Nazis. And instinctively I said, my father's not home. My papa's nicht zu Hause. And they didn't barge in, they stood there, and then I saw my father's hat on the hook on the side, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in big trouble because I told a lie. He said he isn't home and his hat is here, that means he's home. Meanwhile, my parents, of course, also heard the banging, and they came out, and these Nazis came in, and they told my father to get ready and to come with them. We didn't know where to, we didn't know how or what or when. My father got dressed, took his toilet and Schillen. My mother probably made a little food for him to take along, and he left. Now, in the back bedroom, my brother is sleeping. Slept through the whole thing. His birthday is October 27th. Any boys over 15 and men were to be shipped over to the border into Poland. He was not on the list because obviously with the German thoroughness, the lists were prepared ahead of time. So they didn't look for him. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. They didn't look for him, and he slept through it. So that was a real muzzle. My father left. My brother got up. What's happening? And he says, "Oh, I have to go to school." My mother said, "You don't go." He went to the Industrious Royal School in the Tiergarten in Berlin, a very well-known school, and she kept him from going, which was a good thing because those boys who did go to school and were over 15 years old and were not on the list, they were taken as well. So he went. We had near us, a couple of blocks away, we lived our relatives. It was actually cousins of my father, but they were like a generation older. So for us, for Eli and my brother and me, they were like surrogate grandparents because all our grandparents were in Poland. We didn't have any relatives locally except for these Fachlers. And he went and he hid there until the pickup was finished over and he could come home again. What happened to my father? It's an infamous Abschiebung, transport. they were taken to the border of Poland, which was called Spongin in Polish or Benchen in German. And the Poles didn't want them. They said, "Don't come here. We don't want you. We don't need these Jews. You keep them." So they were thrown out of Germany and not permitted to go into Poland. Well, eventually, of course, something had to give, and they did get into Poland.
It's hot.
Let me see how this is, yeah. Great. Oh, that's good. However, my father decided not to go further than this border town of Spongin, because he wanted to stay as close to the family as he could. So he didn't go where his parents lived in Lodz and his brother, sister, and all my mother's family. And he stayed there. He was billeted in a windmill with had layers, and they I guess they had sleeping accommodations on each layer, and there was some other houses available for the other people who decided to stay in that town. Now in Berlin, they took only the men and boys over 15. The other cities of Germany, they took whole family at great hardship. People with children and didn't know where to go or where to stay and what to do. There was one young man by the name of Herschel Greenspan who had gone to Paris with his sister illegally. He didn't really have a visa, he didn't have papers, didn't have it, but his relatives from Germany wrote to him of the terrible things that happened, and they didn't know what to do and where to go. And he was 17 years old, well, content with that, and he was so angry, he decided to go and do something serious. He bought himself a gun, and he went to the German embassy. He was going to kill the German consul in the German embassy. Well, he didn't get to him, but he did shoot another official there by the name of Van Raat, and it was, of course, all over the papers, everything, and the following week, on November the 9th, well, more than a week, we had the infamous Kristallnacht. Who has heard of the Kristallnacht? Oh, great. And the official explanation was that because of Greenspan, we had this program of Kristallnacht, which of course was a big lie, like most of what they did, because again, all the arrangements, all the paperwork, all the addresses of all the synagogues and other places that were being destroyed were made way ahead of time. So the Kristallnacht was all pre-arranged, but because of what happened in Paris with Greenspan, they had this great excuse of doing what they were going to do anyway. So my father is away, was taken away. My brother and I, my mother, are left in Berlin to do whatever we could without him. The November the 9th, in the evening, we heard a big noise, and we go and see that the Nazis are in our courtyard. So we lived in a building like a chet, this way. Remember a chet? So in the back of the building, there was always either a factory or something. The back of our building was our shul, Bet Zion, a beautiful shul. So it was the shul for us kids was like a second home. We were very familiar with it. And they were shattering the windows, and we had blackout. We weren't supposed to have lights showing out, but we could look through the blankets and we could see what they did. Throwing out the Svarim, throwing out the Sifrei Torah, and even picking up benches which were put into the ground with screws and throwing those out all into the courtyard there. There was lots of room. And we were watching this, and then we heard a very loud voice. They were very loud anyway. One saying to the other, "There's some Jews living up there." And we didn't know what to expect, what to do. We froze. My brother spoke about it at the reunion at one point. It was the time when you really became frightened. In any case, they did not come up to the Jews living up there. They went on their way to the next damage, what to do. They didn't only destroy synagogues, they also destroyed stores, shops. Now my uncle, I'll give you the name, is Gershon. So when I talk about Uncle Gershon, you know I'm talking about. Had a beautiful big furniture store on a beautiful big boulevard, and other stores were smashed. The plate glass was smashed in. That's why it's called Kristallnacht, because all the glass was all over the streets everywhere. And the next morning, my uncle or one of his sons said to me, "Can you go over to the store, Uncle Gershon's store, and see what's doing, and see that the employees, the ones who work for him, that they shouldn't steal the merchandise, the furniture, whatever." Well, I was 11 years old. I'm blondish, blue-eyed. I had pigtails, and my uncle says, "Go." I went, and I stood there, and to stop anybody from doing anything, a little girl is a joke, because the Nazis were in it. The people, the locals, they came and they took what they wanted out of the showcase, whatever they could carry, furnishings, everything, whatever there was. And I stood there and I watched. And then there were a couple of women standing near me and looking at me, and I felt, I don't know what I'm doing here. One said to the other, "I think that's a Jewish child." So when I heard that, I turned around and I went home. So much for watching my uncle's shop. Not just a shop, it's a big store. Another uncle, who, he wasn't my uncle, he was going to marry my mother's mother, my mother's sister, who was living with us, Tante Pepi. And this Uncle Herman, I guess they were engaged already, I don't know, but he also had a furniture store, but a smaller one, not such a big showcase. And he was tall, thin, long face, really looking Goyish, we could say, you know, not at all Jewish. And he decided to go and see what was going to happen to his shop. He went by himself. This is really good, whoever made it, thank you. So he went and he stood aside, and they had smashed the windows and they were busy painting a big red J, Jude, a big J on the sides of his shop. And lo and behold, somebody recognized him. Somebody recognized him and came to him and put the red paint all over his face, painted him as a Jew, Jude. He came home to us, and I still have that picture in front of me where my mother and my Tante Peppy scrubbing and trying to get all the paint off his face. This is one of the images that stay with me always. So this is some of the experience that I had as a child of Kristallnacht. Meantime, we were registered for Kindertransport to get to England, to get the children out of Germany and Austria, other places, to save the children. We see how things were going. So we were registered. I for the kid, my brother also, but it was a different program. It was Youth Aliyah. He was older, and he was going on 2 weeks Hachshara into a country somewhere where they were training the boys to come to Palestine. Eventually, of course, he cared, and so did I. Meantime, my mother is running around. I'm with her, trying to find a way out of Germany, trying to get visas, affidavits, permission to go to another country. And we went to consulates. We went to Uruguay, Paraguay, Siam. The benefit that I got out of that is to learn geography, because none of the documents that were given or sold to us were any good. Everything was worthless. No country was going to let us in. So my mother was preparing to. My father had told her to try and sell what we could of our beautiful furnishings, and after 6 months, half a year, he was able to come back, had permission to come back to Germany, just in order to finish the business. Of course, there was no business to finish anymore. Everything was finished long ago. And to prepare to leave Germany. So the only place left for us to go to was Poland. He came back sometimes before Pesach in 1939. My brother left for England in May 1939. He was taken to Scotland with a Youth Only program through a wonderful woman named Resha Fryer, whose son was in the same class with Eli as Madvek in the Adassius Shul, because we met later on here in Israel. It was very, very interesting. Her husband was one a guest in our house also here here. To stay near the shul, it was there's always extra connections, like Jewish geography, which I won't bother you with. And so he was home, and we were preparing and went to a shipper to pack up whatever we were going to take with us. And I did not have my papers for the Kindertransport. So toward the end of the end of May, June, we were ready to go, to leave Berlin and go to Poland. We got there beginning of June, and I had been to Poland 2 years previously. My mother took me to see the family because we hardly knew our grandparents, cousins. I'll tell you that my mother was one of 9 siblings. Only one survived. One uncle survived because he was a communist and he went over to fight with the Russians, and that saved him. Many years later, in 1959, he has married and 3 children. They emigrated to Australia, where he died a few years ago. We got to lodge, and for me to meet all my relatives, my grandparents, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, I was being spoiled. I had a wonderful time, and we traveled a bit to other relatives in other cities, which my nephews have been to recently. I think last May, they went to find the Shorashim. They found graves of my great-great-grandparents. After all these years, the people who died before the Shoah, the graves were still there. We have since arranged to have them cleaned up. We have a yard site, which for us is very important. So I'm in Poland, and how much time do we have? It's a long story. I'm in Poland with my family, having a lovely time. Finally, my papers for the Kindertransport came through. The end of July. I left on July 30th, which happened to be my father's 40th birthday on the same day. And they put me on a train to Berlin. I landed in Berlin, and on the day that I landed, I had just missed one Kindertransport which left that day. That means I had to be in Berlin for 10 days by myself. Now, I'm now 12 years old, and I knew where to go and what to do. It was, after all, my hometown. It was familiar to me. And I was told to go to a hostel for orphan children. It was an orphanage. And I stayed there for the 10 days until it was time for me to go to the train station and meet the transport I was going on. There's a monument on the train station, Liverpool Street Station in Berlin. They eventually do the monument which shows children with their suitcases and so on. We got into the train. The Nazis came with us. We were allowed a small suitcase and 10 Deutsche Mark, only 10 Mark. And anybody who had more than that, it was confiscated, even the money we had. There was one girl that I met years later who was wearing a nice necklace. It was torn off her neck. She still had the scar here in Israel many years later. So it was pretty awful until we got to the Dutch border, and the Nazis left, and the Dutch ladies came on to the train with hot cocoa and chocolate. It was like going literally from hell to heaven. We continued the journey to the coast, Hook of Holland, got onto a boat and went through the English Channel landing in Harwich in England. There we were met by the committee people and whoever they were, I don't remember, taken on a train to London and to a hostel, Willesden Lane Hostel, very nice place. Other kids were there already, and we were made comfortable and given to eat. By the way, my very first cornflakes that I ever ate were in this Willesden Lane Hospital. I'd never seen cornflakes before. Everything was okay, and this is 10 days before the war came out, and when it came to Shabbat, to Friday night, the women who were in charge of us came around and said we had to sign a paper for school. I said, Friday night we had to sign on Shabbat? This was my first crisis. I said, I can't sign this, it's Shabbat, I don't write on Shabbat. We can't do this. Oh, but you must, it's an emergency because you're going to be leaving with the school to the English countryside. You can't stay in London, war was imminent. This is the 1st of September. War broke out on the 3rd of September, on a Sunday. So you're seeing this is Friday night, Shabbat, Sunday. And truthfully, I don't know whether or not I signed as much as they made me. I don't know. It's out of my mind, okay? But the fact is that on Sunday morning, we were lined up with our things and our gas mask, and we left on a train again to Hertfordshire. The English countryside, the place where we went was Hemel Hempstead. And there we were assembled in a big hall, auditorium, I don't know, the school. And people, local people, ordinary English ladies and gentlemen came to take children to their home for the time being. The war's going to start, we have to get these children safe. And we were going to take them in and take care of them until a little while, you know, it's not going to last long. So we were looked at and taken. I call this pick a kid. If you like the way the kid looked, he said, come with me, I'll take you home. And this is exactly what happened to me. Luckily, I was picked together with another little girl who originally from Vienna, but who had come from Italy. Her parents had escaped as Austria and gone to Italy. But even then, from Italy, it wasn't safe anymore. And so we were taken to a family named Overhead, and we were made welcome. And we didn't speak English. We were all German speaking. I had had some English lessons in school already in Berlin, in you know, for even a couple of years, but you know very well that learning a foreign language is not like living in a foreign country. So as young children, it didn't take too long to pick up the language. However, we were not allowed to speak German, so we could do that by ourselves in our little bedroom upstairs. We were told to call the couple Auntie Alice and Uncle Bert. And that's what we did. And she would say to me, don't cry, soon you will see your mother again, and I will be your mother. And then the more she said it, the more I cried. But they were very kind and they were very good, and you have to think that they're not Jewish. They take Jewish kids out of the goodness of their hearts and they take care of them. I was very lucky. I was taken care of with love and food and whatever I wanted to do. Obviously I didn't want to eat treif. So they supplied me with other food for a while, not for long. And Inge was lucky, she had a grandmother in London and some other people, but I hadn't had anybody. So the time went on, and eventually the chief rabbi of England came out of the shock that the children had to eat meat. They were growing children, they needed it for their growth, and it was important for them to eat. So after a while, this is what happened, and I started to eat the meat. If I tell you what meat it was, it's unbelievable. They didn't have so much, England didn't have so much. It was rabbit. Ever heard of rabbit? Run, rabbit, run, that's what they ate. And what else, whatever else, I don't, again, a lot of this I've erased. But this, of course, stays with you. And time went on. We went to school. In the end, the refugee kids, there were a bunch of boys and a few girls, mostly boys, and they excelled at school. And the teachers appreciated it. I guess we came from better schooling, and we did very well, although it was a new language. And we had some outstanding pupils, a certain Pinchas Birnbaum, who became a professor of math, later in the Tanya. I met him, he came to one of our reunions, and it was very interesting. And he had his bar mitzvah even in Hemel Hempstead. In the first year or so, we had a cheder, a Talmud Torah, in a nearby town with a young rabbi, Winter, and we had cheder, we had some Hebrew school. But as the war went on, there was a lot of emphasis on the war effort, and we couldn't keep it up. Things went by the wayside. Eventually, I'm not going to go through all 5 years of war, obviously, but things became tiresome. Our lovely Auntie Alice was wearing out. She wasn't so kind anymore. She wasn't so nice anymore. For whatever reason, we didn't know. We would come home from school and went in trouble into something that we didn't know about. And it went on, and we were very, very anxious of getting away from there. Now, Inge, my friend, had no problem. She could go to London to her grandmother. She also acquired a boyfriend along the way somewhere, and she had left. I was still there. I had Pesach, the first Pesach, we made ourselves, we kashered. The second Pesach, when I was 15, I went to my brother, who was at that point already in Kibbutz Buckingham, very famous. If you know of Lavi, beautiful place here. A lot of the Chaverim who were in Buckingham and other kibbutzim in England founded Lavi. Those are the same people. When they managed to come on Aliyah. There was Aliyah Bet, the illegal Aliyah, and you've learned that history, how they were interned and so on and so forth. That's not what I'm going to talk about. So it was getting very tiresome. I went to Kibbutz Buckingham for Pesach when I was 15. I loved it. I wanted to stay there. I had already been living in the foster home for 3 years. And my brother had just gotten there. I was not permitted to stay there. Whoever was in charge of the organization said, "No, you're too young." I said, "I'm too young, I'll get older there. Better to get older there than where I was." But it didn't work, they didn't let me. So I went back to Hemel Hempstead and to Auntie Alice and Uncle Bert. 2 more years went by, and I did well in school, but I left school and I went to do some war work in a factory in town, which was employed the whole community, and eventually my brother Eli met a wonderful young woman who also came to. She was a madricha, and she came with a group to check out another kibbutz, and they met, and to make a longer story a bit shorter, they were married in the same kibbutz Buckingham, Hanukkah 1944, December. I, of course, was going to the wedding, and I went to the wedding, and it was wonderful. And I met my sister-in-law before that. We made sure to meet each other, and we clicked beautifully together, and I told her what was going on and my problems with the family that I was living with. And at the wedding I met her sister and her parents and the other parts of the family. And her parents invited me to come for Shabbat soon after, which I was very keen on doing. Got back to Hemel Hempstead, and I told my Auntie Alice that I want to go for the weekend to Letchworth, where my brothers-in-laws were living. And she was so against it, she didn't want me to go. I said, why not? I'll just go for the weekend, you know. She was at that point afraid of losing me. She had become attached to me. She had 2 sons in the army, one in the Navy, one in the Army, and she did not want to let me go. No way. That was obvious, especially to me later, I realized. And I said, well, I'm going. I need to go. I was willing time, and it was a terrible dilemma. I didn't want to go against her wishes. On the other hand, I had to cut loose somehow. So she said to me, if you go, you don't come back. Can you imagine? It was really music to my ears, because that's what I wanted, to leave and not come back. When I got back to the house on that Friday morning, my little suitcase was at the front door. The door was locked. True to her word, if you decide to go, you can't come in. If you knock on the door, I'll let you in. I didn't knock on the door. I took my suitcase and went to the bus stop. There were 3 buses that had to go. It's all in the same county, but, you know, a different town. I went to the bus stop, got on the bus, get off to go for the next bus. The next bus stop, somebody calls my name, Miriam. I look up, and on the, you know, the English buses, double-deckers, yeah? On the top deck sits Marion, my new sister-in-law's sister. She spotted me waiting for the bus. I have to say, it's Min Hashemayim, you know, most things are. And I got on the bus, and I was crying. I was so torn and so upset. And she said, I said, I don't have a home to go to anymore. She says, yes, you do. Our home will be your home, don't worry. Meantime, Hitler had sent buzz bombs. Buzz bombs are bombs that are not manned, unmanned bombs, and they go buzz, buzz, buzz until they don't. And when they don't buzz anymore, they fall and they bomb whatever place they're in. And this, we were standing at the bus stop and we hear the buzz bombs. This is how it was. Just a little side information of the war. Anyway, I get to Letchworth together with Marion, and I was welcomed in the family, and I can't say I never looked back, because I certainly looked back all these 5 years. You don't throw away, you can't. I wrote a book and it's all in the book. You can look at it later if you want. Actually, it's Gabi's now. We it was very difficult for me because I was so full of everything. I didn't stop talking. I had to all get it out of me, and eventually, what I did is actually I picked up where I left off when I was 12 years old. I'm now 17. So you can imagine, or maybe you can't, what must have gone on in my head. All these 5 years of experiences of people of different lifestyle. Now I'm picking up back to how I grew up and what I was used to. So I was obviously extremely happy. And no, I think.
Is that the bell?
Okay. I think I have really. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a few other things. I have built the relatives from Berlin with a furniture store. They managed to get to Belgium. How did they do that? My uncle Gershon and his wife Tante Miriam they came from Poland and they lived in Jaffa under the Turks and the Ottoman Empire. Now around the turn of the century. You know a little history about Palestine? It was Palestine. And they took out Turkish citizenship, which was very good. They had passports and they could go to Belgium, which in the end, of course, helped some, but not so much because the Germans and Nazis, they overran all of Europe, as you know. So during that time, my cousin, the one daughter that Gershon had, was married in Berlin to my mother's brother. So my cousin became my aunt. You got me? You got with me? Okay. And they also went to Belgium. Now they had a little boy by the name of Loja, and they went together, all together, smuggled themselves over the border into Antwerp. My uncle, the one who married my cousin, didn't have the Turkish passport. He was Polish. He hid himself until he couldn't, and he smuggled himself into Switzerland. And the Swiss were very nice, very helpful, and they handed him back to the Germans, to the Nazis. My Tante Judy had mail card from him April 1945. When did the war end? Who can tell me?
1945.
May 1945. So he was killed a month before. She still had that mail from him. That's what the Swiss did, just to give you a little bit more overview of all the people who helped us. My father and mother, we don't know exactly how they were killed. It could have been Auschwitz, we don't know. My father had a brother and a sister with three sons. My mother had, as I said, 9 siblings, except for the one that I told you who went to Australia. We haven't found any survivors whatsoever, and we've looked and we've gone through the lists. So we are, my brother and I have at home a bag of 5 years of letters that I wrote to my brother during the 5 years of the war in England. I showed it to you when you came. And it's a history. 5 years of letters and he kept everything. I couldn't keep his, but he kept everything, which is in itself is a story, like it's material for another book some other time. I went to a reunion in England in 1989, 50-year reunion of the Kindertransport. There were over 1,000 Kinder, we call them Kinder, who came from all over the world, from South America, from Australia, from South Africa, and we had a reunion in just outside of London, and the lists on the boards to look for people that you knew. I didn't find one. I didn't find one person that I knew at that point. And we had tables set up to where you came from. Berlin had the most. Vienna had the second most, and there were others all around. So these are all things that happened much later. We had another reunion 10 years later. That was the last one that we had. 1999, again in England. And at that point we had Uncle Winton, who went to Czechoslovakia to rescue 600 something children. And there's a movie about it. If you haven't seen it, you should try and see it. It's wonderful. This is what one man did just before the war, even though it was at the beginning of the war, and he brought all these kids to England. So you have to think about what we lost. 1.5 million children among the 6 million. But I would also tell you what we have. You have my brother. This is part of his family. You have my family. I have in the neighborhood of over 100 descendants. I have 3 children, but the descendants are number over 100. My brother has much more than me because he had 6 children, not 3. He only had 3. So you see that we're rebuilding, and I want to leave you on this more optimistic note. This is what happens. In my husband's family, it's a very similar story. He also came to England. He was already yeshiva bocher, about 19 years old, with a Schneider yeshiva, who came originally from Slobodka. It's a big story. And Rav Schneider was able to bring them to London eventually. And he was part of the yeshiva bochum there. However, another side story before I let you go. The British were very scared of German undercurrent, of German nationals who would work against their government. So they rounded up as many German nationals, including yeshiva bochers. So he was rounded up, put onto the Isle of Man, together with many more, including the father of Rabbi Hauer, who was just died, or including him, and eventually shipped out to Australia and Canada. One ship that went to Australia was torpedoed on the way, and everything was lost. Everybody was lost. He was lucky to be able to get to Canada. On the trip to Canada, they were robbed of everything else that would have left by the British soldiers. We're talking about British now, not German. The watches were taken, their pens, whatever they had. They got to New Brunswick, Fredericton, New Brunswick, in prisoner of war camps, together with Nazis. The British at that point didn't make a difference. German was German was German. Eventually, these young yeshiva boys and men were able to send word to the communities nearby and get Swarim and get a Sefer Torah and set themselves up in the camp properly as they want, even get some kosher food. The day that they arrived at the camp in New Brunswick was Tisha B'Av. Everybody had fasted. A boiling hot day, everybody fasting. When they finally got there, there was one water tap for everybody, for hundreds of them to drink from. These are little side stories that you don't hear about, but that's what happened. And these were the boys who were lucky. They got out eventually. They got to Toronto and Montreal or wherever they wanted to go, thanks to the rabbi in Toronto and people who took on the case, of course. Now, my husband had one brother and one sister. Both came to England with a Schneider yeshiva. The sister was a kinder transport. And I would say, believe in horror, we must have 1,000 descendants by now, because they all had large families and their children had large families. So we're trying to rebuild. And on that optimistic note, I will say it's a pleasure to see you all. I wish you a lot of Hatzlacha. And when you come to Poland, you should remember what you did. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try and I will show you a picture. If you've been to Yad Vashem, you'll recognize it. You come to Yad Vashem, there's a big walk there that you go. There's steps that lead to this. You see this? So what is it? It's the Magen David, no? With 6 slabs. 6 million, 6 slabs. This is a picture of an Israeli reunion. When was it? I don't know. Some 55 years. 1994, okay? It says 55 years. I'm in there somewhere, but it just, this is what I was guiding for 10 years in Yad Vashem, the monuments and the art museum of the Holocaust art. This one I showed you. Okay. This is how I got to England. This is how my little girl Inga, she was a year younger than me, but also much smaller, and Auntie Alice. Okay. This is a Red Cross letter. We were allowed 25 words or less to write to Poland. This was returned to me by the censor unopened because there was no way to deliver it to. It did work for us for a while, as long as we could write to Belgium, and before Belgium was overrun, my relatives in Belgium would send the letters on to Poland, and vice versa. So we had correspondence. I have letters from my father. These are letters from my parents. You can't see much on it, but they're letters from parents. This is something 2 little girls did for the war effort in Hemel Hempstead, in the town. We went and we collected money for Russia. 2 little girls helped Russia, and it was put in the local paper, so it was a big deal. That was that. And that's it. That's it.
So thank you very, very much for you coming here. It's trouble for sure, but we enjoyed it very, very much. The patience that you have to tell your story over and over again. I imagine it's not the first time. So No, I imagine. So thank you very, very much. Yeah?
I have not counted the time.
בסדר? שמעתם. זאת אומרת, אין ספור פעמים היא כבר העבירה את הסיפור הזה, ורואה את זה בתור, you see it as something that you have to do.
I'm very happy to do it, especially to these boys. I've got kids. Not such kids anymore. Before you know it, you'll be a Kostenbacher, don't worry.
בעזרת השם, שמעתם? אמרתי שכולכם תהיו חתנים בקרוב ממש. צריך להגיד אמן בקול. So thank you very, very much for everything. Have a good health and future. בעזרת השם.